So 11.4, we're gonna talk about selecting and drawing conclusions from samples, okay? Which means we have to talk about, some different categories and things that can happen with this. Okay, a population, okay? Did you guys know that the census is coming out this year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's a census in the realm of the United States? What's that mean?
like,
Many people, right?
it's like a survey, just like something that people, they ask you, like, it's just like a huge survey about the entire country.
Yeah, so every like 10 years, the US runs a census, and it's for the whole nation. And they go around to people and ask like, how many's in your household? What's your average salary? Like questions like that to get like an average base of what American citizens look like or buy or what the population is like. And they'll break it down into even further things like where ethnic groups live and different stuff like that. Okay? So this is the year, because it's 2020,
Yeah.
the census will come out this spring and they'll start going around. People
every
get
10
paid to go door to door to literally ask people questions.
Oh, wow.
Okay, you can take it online nowadays as well, but if you don't fill it out online, they send someone to your house to talk to you, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Is that every 10 years or something?
It's every 10 years, yeah, to give a,
You have to be an adult, right, to do it?
yeah, you have to be the head of the household kind of thing,
That's what I thought.
or like have an apartment or whatever, yeah,
No wages.
okay? So a population is a group of people or objects that you want information about, which is like a census, okay? When it is too difficult, time-consuming, or expensive to survey everyone in a population, information is gathered from a sample or a subset of the population. Some methods for selecting a sample are described below. So what we're gonna do is, we need to make ourselves familiar with these 4 types of samples, and then we're gonna read through problems and decide what type of sampling it is. Does that make sense? Okay, so one of a type of sample is in a self-selected sample, members of a population can volunteer. So self-selecting means you're volunteering, okay? In a systematic sample, a rule is used to select members of a population, such as selecting every other person, or every 5th person has to be of a certain race, or whatever, okay? So a systematic sample is when you're selecting in an order, okay? There's a rule being followed. A convenient sample is an easy-to-reach members of population are selected, such as those in the first row. So convenience makes sense. It's like whatever is most convenient. Oh, that's what I meant. Did I say Matthew? I'm sorry.
Right.
He hates me. It's okay. In a random sample, each member of a population has an equal chance of being selected. So random is like literally what it says, like we draw sticks, and it's whoever has the shortest sticks is who's being sampled. Okay, so it's not based on anything else. Systematic samples are usually used like in a census, for example. When we do the census, they'll then take all that information that they gain and they'll take systematic stuff out of it, okay, to see what's going on, to see how things are. Okay, so then we get problems like this. It says, a sports writer wants to survey college basketball coaches about whether they think wooden bats should be mandatory throughout college baseball. Identify the type of sample described, okay? The sports writer contacts only the coaches that he has cell phone numbers for in order to get quick responses. What type of sampling would that be of those 4?
Convenient.
Convenient, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, convenient, clearly, because he has their numbers and he can get a hold of them quickly, okay? The sports is selected, oh, I can't scroll and stop at the same time, okay? So it is a convenience sample. Okay, how about the sports writer mails out surveys to all the coaches and uses only the surveys that are returned?
I guess that's systematic.
You think it's
Wouldn't it be
systematic?
random?
You think it's random?
Because
Okay.
you
Oh,
select all
you
the
can't decide
coaches.
which ones reply.
Cause all the
Well,
coaches.
I was gonna say.
It's self-selected.
Cause they get to,
Right, because they get to choose.
Decide.
So here's the deal, that one's
Oh.
tricky. So he sends them out,
The
right?
people get
But the
to choose.
people get to choose if they wanna be a part of that survey. So it's self-selected. Does
Wait,
that
how
make
do you-
sense?
So how do you know that?
So self-selected means I volunteered
It's not
information
mandatory.
and I gave it to you. Even though he sent stuff out, okay? The people that returned it are the ones that volunteered to return their information, yes?
Oh, so you're saying that because they returned it, they go, okay.
Yeah, they then became volunteers of it, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, that one's a little tricky, like I said, sometimes these are tricky to decide between, okay? So don't feel like. Why does it do this? I get so angry. Okay, I need to go to 766, is that what I need?
Yeah.
I don't understand why.
You have to
This is all
refresh. I did it, you won't even let you do it. You refresh.
Doesn't even make sense.
I would think that you
I
can
don't
do
think
that
it's
page.
do it.
Yeah,
They did it again. What did?
not to the
Well,
next page.
in the back. Yeah, I was talking about computer.
767, okay. Let's see if it will let me overwrite this.
What was
No.
that?
Okay. Okay, so here's the next one. Let's see if I can get this. Okay, it says, there's also two types of sampling. There's an unbiased sample and a biased sample. An unbiased sample is a representative of the population you want information about. A sample that overrepresents or underrepresents part of the population is called a biased sample. So something is biased when I skew it in the direction I want it to go. Okay, so if I only take a survey of white Americans, that's biased, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, if I take a survey of, if I take a survey that is 50-50 of every population group in the U.S., well, clearly not 50-50,
Yeah.
but you get what I'm saying. The same percentage of everybody in the US population, like, race-wise, then it's an unbiased sampling, okay? So, this says, identify a biased sample, okay? The manager of a concert hall wants to know how often people in the community attend concerts. The manager asked 50 people standing in line for a rock concert how many concerts per year they attend. Tell whether the sample is biased or unbiased and explain. What do you think?
It's biased because only people there are, people who are there are fans,
Okay, good.
so they're gonna go more than people who
Aren't
really
there?
fans. Yeah.
Okay, and it also can be biased also because it's in front of a rock concert, which is
Yeah.
a specific type of concert as well, right?
Mhm.
So there's two reasons that it's biased. One, they're already in line for a concert, and two, they're in line for a specific genre of concert, okay? Okay, this says, you are a member of the prom committee. You want to poll members of the senior class to find out where they want to hold the prom. There are 324 students in the senior class. Describe a method for selecting a random sample of 40 seniors to poll. How can you decide that? What could you do?
Random name picker.
Okay, you could do, yeah, you could do something like with the computer where it just randomly picks names, okay?
Well, you can
Then
use
do this
all of
page.
the students in the class, like, I guess.
A lot of people.
not
Well, it
just
only
them.
wants 40, it only wants 40 though. What's another way I could do something randomly?
Like like systematic, where you just get.
Okay, yeah, where you just get randomly selected like in that. So you can do it through random order of just like, randomly being like every third person, right, or whatever. Okay, so there are some examples. Now, the next thing, let's see if it will let me go to another page.
I think it will. I don't think it just, I think it just won't let you go to that page.
I don't
Or
understand.
768.
Yeah. Beautiful, okay. I don't know why it does that sometimes, it's weird. Okay, 768, sample sizing. When conducting a survey, you need to make the size of your sample large enough so that it accurately represents the population, okay? As the sample size increases, the margin of error decreases. So, if there are 4 people in this room and I took a sample of 3 of you out of 4, my margin of error is gonna be less than if I took it of 1 of 4 of you. Yes? Okay? That's what it's saying. The margin of error gives a limit on how much the responses of the sample would differ from the responses of the population. For example, if 40% of the people in a poll prefer candidate A and the margin of error is plus or minus 4%, then it is likely that between 36 and 44% of the entire population prefer candidate A. This happens when we look at elections,
Yeah.
okay? When they run presidencies, you always see that plus or minus margin of error. This is what it's talking about. So within this range is how much population they've won over, okay? When a random sample of size n is taken from a large population, the margin of error is approximated by the formula 1 over radical n, plus or minus radical n. So you get P, the population, minus whatever that number is, okay? And that population plus whatever that number is,
Oh, okay.
okay?
Well, it's
So
the
if
same
it's
thing as
60% and my margin of error is 1 over radical whatever, and it comes out to 6, then I would add 6 to it and I would subtract 6 from it, okay? So what that looks like is this, okay? So it says, in a survey of 1,011 people, 52% said that television is their main source of news. What's the margin of error for the survey? What would I need to do to find that margin of error?
You need to take 1,000
And do what with it? So what do you have to do with it?
Russian.
And subtract it from 1 over radical 52
Okay,
Wait a minute, would you?
sort of, you're on to the right idea. So to find the margin of error, I'm gonna take 1, okay, over radical 10, 11, okay? So I need to figure that out first, okay? Because right now it's saying what is the margin of error, it's not saying what's the range of the data, it's saying what is the margin of the error. The margin of error is 1 over the radical of what you took, of the population you took. So 1, divided by radical 10, 11, gives you plus or minus 0.03, right? Okay,
Oh, my bad, I need the one.
plus or minus 0.031. Now, when I change this into a percent, that means I get plus or minus 3.1%, correct?
Yeah.
That's my margin of error, plus or minus 3.1%. Given interval, this is where that stuff comes in. Given interval that is likely to contain the exact percent of the people who use the television as their main source. Well, look on that data, or even read this. What is the percentage of people that use televisions?
52%.
So that's where I take 52% and I add 3.1 to it, and I take 52% and I subtract 3.1. When I do that, I get 55.1%, yes,
Yeah.
and I get 49.8, is that it? I can't do that.
Mm.
Yeah, 48.9%. So my margin is between these two things. Okay, so the margin is between 55.1% and 48.9% would, get their information from the TV.
So we just have to like round, like to like that, like that's like the.
Yeah, just round to like 1 decimal point, it'll be fine. Okay, and so that is how I figure some stuff out. Now, from there, we should have, yes, there we go. Okay, it says a polling company conducts a poll for the US presidential election. How many people did the company survey if the margin of error is plus or minus 5%? How can I work that backwards? The margin of error is given by 1 over radical whatever, yes?
Yeah.
Radical n, okay? Now, if I know that it comes out to equal 5%, okay? Turn that back into a decimal, what do you get?
0.05.
0.05.
You square it.
You square it, what's 0.05 squared? 0.0025, yes?
Yes.
And we know that that's like this,
Yes.
correct? Okay, so then, yeah, well, we can work it backwards like this. We're gonna say 0.0025 equals 1 over n, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so then I would solve by doing what? You have this formula, how do you get rid of this radical?
You square.
You square it, you square both sides, yes?
Yeah.
So what's 0.0025 squared? Oh, it gives you something funky, doesn't it?
Yeah, I gave you the long decimal.
It gives you like a long decimal, okay. So here's what I gotta do. I have to, first of all, look at this. I have to go like this, okay. So then I get radical in over n equals, it's 0.0025. And then I square both sides, yes, square, okay, that cancels. And so then you should get that 0.025, cause it gives you something funky, comes out to be 400, cause it's gonna say, did it say 6.25 e to the negative 6?
Mine just said. Well, yes, well, mine just said 0.00000065.
Okay, yes, yours is a little different than mine, but yes, mine just put it into that,
Wait, 6.25 e to the negative
That's what
six.
she has.
that's what I have, 6.25 e to the negative 6, okay. So,
What did it say something? No.
No, I hear the bleachers. So that's-
I don't know what they're doing. Equals 1 over the square root of n, if I square this and square this, I get that point, whatever you said, 0, 0, 0, okay. And this becomes 1 squared is 1 over n, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then, what did you say it was, 6 points?
I don't like this.
Yeah, I don't either.
Please tell me this is a good idea.
I'm confused.
That's what you get, correct?
Yeah.
How does that go?
So my question is,
How do you get
I get 400.
We're gonna get, well, that's what I'm trying to work on. So then you get, you have to do this, so that this cancels and gives you 1 equals, and then you get 0.0000625 in, yes?
I know you did.
Then you have to divide by this. It should be, is it 4 zeros or is it 5 zeros? Is it 5 zeros?
Yeah.
This is how you get it. I'm showing you step by step. So then you divide by 1, 2, 3.
And oh, is they take the square root of this?
Yes, and then you get,
So I got.
yep, and so then you get this, right, the 16,
Mm-hmm.
oh, there should be 4. And then you take the square root of that, which gives you 400.
So how come they?
Make it that
Well,
complicated?
not that they didn't really explain it.
I know, they're like, oh, the answer, yeah. Because they're doing it in graphing calculators that read the system, so it's just the, there's your
Oh.
answer.
All right.
When you do it by hand, it takes more time, okay? So then you get 400. Okay. So
That's,
these are the type of things we're gonna work on our,
is that gonna be like?
you might get like 1 or 2, but they're not gonna be super